Be sure to check out my store for the stuff I use and templates at a low cost, and get my everything pack so you can have everything in my store at a reduced cost, less than $20 if you tweet it out.
What's up guys, Qehzy here bringing you guys another tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to create this 3D fall header in Cinema 4D and Photoshop. Now this doesn't have to be a fall themed header. You can do green leaves and do things related to any other time of year, doesn't really matter. But since we're in the fall season, I decided to go with orange leaves, and it's kind of a more interesting color than green. But anyway, let's hop over into Cinema 4D and get started. So this is what the render looks like in Cinema 4D, and there's a couple things you're going to need. You're going to need, first of all, a Lightroom, and I'm going to be using my own Lightroom. If you want to use my Lightroom, I have it in my store for like $1 or $2. And I'll have a link to that in the description. And we're going to be using some sort of gray textured material for text, and I'm using one from my new material pack. It's called Shell 6, and you can that's also in my store if you're interested, or you can just use another gray material, or you just can use a normal gray material with no texture. It's up to you really, and you can play around with whatever. And then we want to get a couple of tree Cinema 4D files. One of a tree with leaves in the whole nine, and another one of just like a log. You can see here's a log. Here's what the log looks like. These are all actually the same logs, just kind of turned and twisted in different directions to kind of look like a tree, but it's really not. So where you can get stuff like that is just doing a Googling search, finding stuff. I got the tree from turbosquid.com, and it's this one here. The Autumn Horse Chestnut, and you can just download that for free and open it up in Cinema 4D. And the log texture, or the log model, I'm not exactly sure where I got it, and I'll try to find a link to it. If I don't, I'll just include a download for it for you guys in the description. Also, if you want the full Cinema 4D file and Photoshop file, you can get that on my Patreon page. But anyway, the first thing we want to do then is open up our Lightroom. So here's my Lightroom, and we want to go and find that tree download. So is this it here? Oh, I already have it open. So you just want to open it up. It should look something like this. And all you want to do is go to the folder it's in and Command C on that, and then go to Window, back to your Lightroom, and Command V to paste. Now you want to click yes here so all the textures are available to use, and boom, there's our tree. Now I'm going to move this down a bit and expand the crap out of it. So we want to make this real big. I don't know if that's too big. That doesn't look too bad, but let's move it to somewhere where we can actually see stuff. So maybe like right in here. Maybe move it forward a bit, like that. Now we want to open it up and delete some of the stuff. So any stem, we just basically want to get rid of, except for the little ones on the leaves. So roots, we don't need. You can either delete it or hide it, but I'm going to delete. Leaf, we want that. Stem, I think we want that. Leaf we want. Stem we'll leave. B3 we'll delete. B2, B1, and the trunk. Delete all that, and then maybe, where's their thicker stem? Oh, this original stem we can delete as well. There we go. Now we can actually just play around with this and rotate it into some other direction maybe. A lot of leaves going on. Let's try to find a spot where it opens up a bit. I don't know, maybe increase the size even more. Let me hop out here and actually move everything forward. So we're in the thick of things. And oh, that might be too far. Alright, so after a little bit of tweaking, I finally got it to a place that looks good. Anyway, once you do that, you want to go and get that log that I'll either have a link to or the download. And I just have to go back to the original real quick and get it. And we want to copy and paste that in here and press yes again so we don't lose that texture. Now we want to kind of make a decision about our text. Now I already had my text in here, which you might not have had text in here. I just used that for a guide to set up the leaves and stuff. But you want to get your text now. If you don't have any, just go MoGraph, MoText. And I'm just going to leave the text say Ricky. And we're going to go to font. There we go. And we want to pick the font Bonzer. Bonzer like San Francisco or something. Yeah. Bonzer San Francisco. And we're going to bump up the size of that pretty good. That works. We'll go to caps, fillet cap, and bump up the fillet cap to 2 or 3. I think I'll go with 3. And then we want to go ahead and add that gray material. So I'm going to go to my material pack and shell 6. Drag that in here and add that there. And then let's go ahead and sort of arrange our log where we want it. So let's go to that mesh material and let's do something like this. Bring it over. I think that's a pretty good spot. I think that's where we'll put the text. And we're gonna have to move that tree back eventually. But we'll actually just hide it for now. Maybe actually move the log back slightly so it's a bit smaller. We'll duplicate that. Put a little rotation on it. Move it back maybe. And up. Maybe something like that works. Actually, let's just slide it over to the right. And back a little bit. Alright, that works. And let's duplicate the original one. Make this one smaller. Bring it forward. And we'll rotate it a different way. Maybe like that. And bring it down up front, like so. That's pretty cool. And we could add a few more. Maybe just duplicate them all. Hop out of the camera. Move them all back. And then rotate them in some other manner. Maybe like that. Maybe bring them down. Delete this one maybe. And take this one to the left a bit. That's pretty good. That's a little interesting, I guess. You just want to mess around, place these in different areas, kind of create a look of a tree. And now let's go back to our text here, and we're gonna select it and go to MoGraph Effector Random, and we want to go down to parameter, and at PZ we want to set that to 0. And then X and Y, we just want to kind of adjust so there's just like a subtle change there. Like so. And then we want to check rotation and not do that one, not do that one, only do this last one. And you can go slightly in either direction, either positive or negative. Let me go just slightly negative. I think that looks pretty good. And then go back to the text and just line it up somewhere on the wood here, the log, and you can go on top or just like on the text or on the wood like I did. which I'm going to do again. So let's go ahead and try to line this up. Something like that. Maybe bring it back so it's all the way there. Rotate it a little more. There we go. Pretty good. And now we can actually, we're in the camera, so we can put a slight angle on this. So maybe we want to do something like that. And let's actually rotate that a little more because it's still not right. It's a little better. Maybe move it down again. Or rotate, just get it a little more of an interesting angle. Gonna have to probably move this up a bit. There we go. I think that's pretty cool. And then let's go back and check the tree again, and you can see we're gonna have to adjust this one more time. And ooh, this is actually pretty good. Something like that. And actually, I'm just gonna move it back a tad bit. There we go. That's pretty decent. And if I render this out for you quick. Alright, so this render's taken a pretty good amount of time to finish up, but you can see we have our scene coming together. It's looking pretty good. You might notice a few things though, that one, the leaves aren't red, and two, leaves aren't in that great of a position, and we are just going to go back and change that. So let me click off to stop this render, and sorry if you can hear my fan from my computer now, I don't know, but we want to go to the leaf textures, and I actually have two here. I'm not sure exactly which one this is for, but we'll click on one of them, double click on one of them, and bring up the material. Oops, I did not mean to double click that, but you want to click the color, click the little image, and actually let me expand this. Instead of clicking that image, we can just go hit the drop down arrow and set that to layer, and then click the image, and you can see now we have some layers here we can adjust. So if we go to shader color and then select a red, maybe a little lighter red, we can hit this up arrow and set that to color or hue, depending. It shouldn't make too big of a difference, but I'm gonna go with color and then just dip the opacity of that down just a bit, like so, and that'll make the leaves more red. And we just want to hop out of that color, click color again, and go back to that drop down arrow, copy channel, and then go back to that second leaf and drop down, paste channel, and now all the leaves should be red, or reddish orange, which they are, which is what we want. Cool. Now I want to go back to this tree, and I'm actually going to bring down the size again. I know this has been a lot of tree adjustment, but it takes a while to kind of get it to a good place. Alright, there we go. I did just a little bit of adjusting, got it somewhat better. This part might take you a while to get leaves at a decent area, but just mainly have them behind the text. You don't need them in front, so you can bring this layer back pretty far and still have it work. You just want it to intersect with the logs a little bit, but this should be fine. And the final step here is to simply just add a little more detail to the tree. So what I did was I went to the splines, got a helix, and we're gonna flip that to ZY, and we want to increase the height. That's pretty good. You just want it to be drag it over so it's off to the left and off to the right slightly. And then you can do this a couple different ways. I'm just going to use Reaper X. If you don't have Reaper X, it's free to download, and you can Google it, or I'll put a link to it in the description for you guys to download. Drag the helix into the Reaper X, bring down the strands to 1, decrease the radius a little bit, maybe like 4 or 5, drop down the distance, Maybe just mess with the coils a little bit. That's pretty good. And then you want to just drag one of these wood textures on there. So you could do the one from the tree, the bark here, or the one from the log. I did the one from the log originally. And then you can just select that rotate tool and rotate it in some direction, and then just kind of move it around. That's a pretty good spot. Duplicate it. Maybe have it up in the tree here. And maybe one more over to the right. And yeah, you can do that a few more times if you want. But that is essentially the render then, and we can go ahead and render this out and save it as whatever. And now we can move on to the Photoshop part. Alright, now we're in Photoshop here, and we're gonna go ahead and add in the render. If I can find it. Dang it. There we go. Drag that in, and I'm using the original one I made, not the one I just showed you, but you want to expand the size to fill the width of the header, and then bring it up so you can see the text like that. Okay. And I'm going to have a color correction here. I'm not going to show you how to create it. I'm just going to include this with the log download in the description, so you can have this, open it up, and have it visible above the render, and we're going to start working from there. Now the first thing we want to do is add some shadows to the text. So we're going to create a new layer, clipping mask it, grab the brush tool, make sure black is the foreground color, have a soft brush, and decrease the size, and go around the edges of the text. So you want to go across the bottom, and like below, like there, get these little bits sticking out, and get the sides. And do that for each letter, and it doesn't matter if you go on the log, because we're going to be darkening that up in a second too. Alright, there we go, went around all the edges, and we're just going to set that to overlay in 55%. You can mess around with that and maybe go a little lower, but let's create another new layer. Same thing, clipping mask, black, soft brush, and this time we're just going to kind of go below the text like that, and kind of off to the angle because our light source is coming from here. So we're going to just have like a slight shadow here and around all the text. So you want to go in between these letters now a little bit and just darken it all up. Alright, there we go, darkened up some of these spots in here, and we can set that to, overlay, and we can go like a lower opacity, like 15 or something. That just darkens up that area a little bit, kind of makes it look a little nicer. Now create another new layer, and we're going to flip to white now, and we're going to do the leaves. So let's increase the size of that brush, and then just go around. I'm using the bracket keys, by the way, to change the size. I forgot to mention that earlier. And just go and get all the darker spots of the leaves, or all the parts of the leaves, and we're going to brighten them all up. Alright, there we go. I left some of these brighter ones alone so they're not too bright, but we're just going to set that to overlay 75%, maybe a little more. Yeah, sure, we'll go 80 some. And now we can go in and darken, enlighten the rest of the text and the rest of the render really. So if I create a new layer here, since I'm on white, I'll keep it there and just lighten up the right side of the text. That's just slightly darker than the left 3 letters. These right 2 letters are pretty dark. And just simple white overlay, decrease the opacity until it blends pretty well. Like so. Create a new layer, and we'll just darken up stuff. So black, and actually I'll do the text and the landscape separately. So this is pretty bright here and there, and we'll set this one to overlay, the ones on the text to overlay very slightly, and then another one, and we're gonna do all these bits of the tree that are a little too bright. So here. Alright, did some bits here, And what we're going to do is just decrease that, not change it, keep it on a normal blending mode, just decrease it a little bit until it's not too overwhelming. See, that's a little better, and it's not that kind of obnoxious brightness. Now, I didn't like this bottom left corner here, so one thing I did, which you can do with any part of this render, is duplicated it, and we gotta duplicate at the bottom, drag that to the top, and I brought this right bit over so it kind of was here in the corner. Got the eraser tool, right click, rasterize that layer, increase the brush size of the eraser tool, and just erase some of these bits in that corner so it blends in here. And now we have a little more going on the left, and I think that looks a tad bit better. And now it's pretty empty, so we want to, or it's not empty, but the color is kind of just in the leaves in the background here, and we want to add some leaves in the foreground. So we're gonna go to Google leaves falling PNG, click one that you like. I did this first one, and drag that in. And we're gonna increase the size, fill it up, and maybe find an area that we like. So maybe like that, hit enter, and you'll notice a white outline around here. And I think if you just command select this and then command C, command V, once you do that, that edge will basically be gone, and you can kind of work from there now. It might slightly still be there, but it doesn't stand out as much. So I'm going to delete that original. Name this one leaves because we don't want to get confused with layers now. But double click on that, go to color overlay, select some sort of orangish red. So I did this one here, A8523A. Set it to color. You can also do hue, and hue might leave it a little bit brighter, but I liked color, so I'm going to stick with that. Click OK, and let's duplicate that layer and go to filter, blur, motion blur. And if you just go on a slight angle and like a small distance, like 30 or 40, you can just get like a nice falling effect, or like we leave blowing in the air, the wind. So I like that, and I'm just going to click OK on 36 pixels, 47-degree angle, and then hide both of those blending options and select both of them and duplicate, and just move it around, find another spot to include some more, so maybe over here like that. That's pretty cool. Maybe get the original two and bring them over more like that, and there we go. That's a little more interesting, and you could add more if you want, take some away, whatever, it's up to you, and you can just mess around. Now go to the top layer again and go below to this duplicated render part, or just go below the leaves somewhere, and we want a pumpkin or something else to kind of add spice, or not spice, I don't know why I keep saying that, but just to add a little more to the header. So I have this pumpkin here, just from searching pumpkin PNG, and I'm going to bring that on here and put it towards the left. Command T, decrease the size, maybe slight rotation, and we'll plop it right here. Press enter, create a new layer, and clipping mask that layer. Go to the brush tool, get black, increase the size, and click on the bottom just once or twice. That's pretty good. You can see it's kind of glitching out, so we're gonna grab the eraser tool and erase just a bit at the top. But you can see that really dims that color, so it doesn't stand out like to an annoying degree. But it still looks a little weird, so we're gonna create another new layer. Brush tool, black selected, and just kind of go along the bottom like that, and then bring that below the pumpkin layer. Decrease the opacity and somewhere in the 50s, and now we have a slight shadow for it. Rename that layer to pumpkin, and cool, now we have a little pumpkin. And of course you can add anything there really. I had an owl in the background as well, and I had the moon in the background slightly, so you can go ahead and add stuff like that. But now we're basically done with this section of the render, so we're going to select everything accept the background and the color correction, group it, and call it render. And actually, you wouldn't want to add the moon in that folder, you would want to add it in this one that we're about to do. So go to the background or of black, and we want to add a sky. So I searched scary sky, picked one of these, and I'm just going to go ahead and add it. And it's not going to be too visible, so I don't care about the quality. And I'm just going to expand the size of this so it fills out. Maybe bring it down so I get the darker part of the sky, like that. And you can see how similar the sky is to our texture. Slightly blue, and it looks pretty good. But we want to darken it up a little, just a little bit. So we're going to decrease the opacity, and it blends in with that black. Now it looks a little better, and here's where you can add a moon or something behind the leaves. But I'll just let you guys do that on your own time. But once you have your sky and any other little details, you just want to select them and group them and call it BG. Now we want to move on to the effects part, so click on the render folder, create a new layer, which should be above and outside that folder. Get the brush tool, get white, and we're going to create some light here. So increase the size, go to the top left portion of the header, click once, now we have some light, set it to screen, and like 6%, and we have a slight light. Hit enter if that's blue, the opacity box is blue. And let's create another new layer, and I'm just going to do command delete, and that will fill it with the background color, which is black for me. So we just want a black solid layer, and we're going to add a lens flare, so go to filter, render, and lens flare, and I'm going to drag this off to the left like so, and we'll leave it at the normal settings because this is going to be just a very slight effect. So click OK, set that to screen, and bring down the opacity to maybe like 60s. That's pretty good. If I hop out here, Command T, I might actually just want to expand that out a little bit so you don't see too much of that, but it's very slightly there. And yeah, I think I like that. You can adjust that however you please. And to kind of focus everything in on the center of the text, I want to darken all the edges, kind of like a slight vignette. So let's create another new layer, brush tool, flip the white and black so the black is now the foreground color, and we're just going to go around the edges. Just like that, and we're gonna, you could just leave it at normal blend mode and bring down the opacity to 35, and you can see darkens the edges, brings your eye to the middle of the text, which is where we want, and that kind of just makes it look a little bit better. Now the color is mainly red throughout this, so we want to mix that up. So we'll create another new layer, and now let's select a color. So you can do like oranges, yellows, or reds, depending on what color your leaves are now. So I'm gonna go to like a yellow orange, pick that, get the brush tool, and just click around on some spots, some of these individual leaves I want to select. There we go, kind of clicked around, got some leaves, and we're just going to set that to hue. And you can see now we have some color variation in our leaves. And it might be pretty dull, but we'll be fixing that later on anyway. Now this is the part where we're going to have to use my insane pack a little bit, which is 90 cents in my store. But you necessarily don't need it. You just need some particles just to kind of make this a little more interesting. So I'm going to hop over here, and in static and particles I'm going to grab a few. So I'm going to get, what is it? I'm going to get dust with a capital T, normal dust, and was there another one I wanted? I think probably particle, or particles, yeah, we'll do that. Actually, what does this one look like? Okay, I'll do part. So I'm going to do these three. You might have seen these in other packs. They're actually pretty common. You can search dust particles or particles on Google and probably find these ones or similar ones. And I'm gonna go ahead and add these 3 in here and make them visible. Actually, we'll start with the particles and add them. Command T and make sure it fills out the whole document. That's pretty right on. I think that gets every corner. And bump down the opacity. Well, we'll go like 42%. That works. Let's go to the dust one here. I'm going to Command T, bring that over, increase the size of it so it fills the height. Like that. And the opacity of this guy we're going to put at about 20 and hit enter, and we can duplicate this a few times and have one on the right and left somewhere. Might be too far. Right there. And you might not even be able to see this because it's very subtle effects. But now go to the dust and we're going to increase that one. This one we're going to put at like 80% opacity and kind of move that one around too. So one on the right and one on the left. There we go. Now it's little particles going around. You can see it just made that slight bit of difference. If I uncheck all these, you can see it just slightly made, added a little bit of detail, kind of more interest, have more things floating around. It helps bring the falling leaves together. And I just think that looks really nice. Alright, now we're in the final stretch, and now we want to start playing with the colors and fixing this to get it right. So it looks pretty good right now, pretty Halloween, pretty spooky. And this is where we can go in 2 different directions. We can keep going darker, duller, make it a little more spooky, or go brighter, more happy fall, autumn feel. So what I did was I went down to the adjustments here and click selective color. And what I'm going to do is on this reds panel here, where it says colors reds, I'm going to go to the cyan and bring that down to about -70. And you can see how much that just brightened up all those leaves. So I'm going for the more happy-go-lucky leaf or scene look. But if I didn't do this and left it darker, it would still have a cool look and just kind of like a more spooky look, I guess, which would fit in with Halloween a little more, I suppose. But we also want to select colors and then change it to yellow. And then on the yellow tab, just bring that down to about -15. And that will also kind of slightly make everything look a little bit better. And you can see the difference there, pretty big, and just makes it a little more interesting. Now, another one that we're going to do to kind of bring all the color together, create a new layer, soft brush, and we can bump up the size. About 1200, 1300 works, and let's get a orange, and we're going to click around the edges, so like there, doom, doom. Maybe get a more yellowish orange, click around, maybe slightly smaller areas, like that. Actually, let's go one up here, and we're gonna set those to screen and decrease the opacity until it's just, the yellows might be a little too yellow, we might want those a little orange. Decrease them, and now we have kind of a nice glow throughout that kind of brightens everything, makes it look pretty nice. And I'm gonna do a Command U real fast and just go slightly negative. Is it gonna update for me? Oh, a little too far. Yeah, a little like -25, there we go. And that's more of a fall look, and you can see it just brightens up some of these spots, makes it look a little more friendlier, I suppose. And now we are on the final stretch. So I'm gonna put all of this into its own group now too. I'm just gonna call it effects. And now let's go ahead and add social media real fast. I'll show you how I did mine. So let's create a new layer, go back to black and white, go to the shape tool, rectangle tool, create a rectangle, and you can see this log here. I brought it so I can cut it out there. So what I did was decrease the opacity of that a little bit, don't create a new layer, go to the pen tool, zoom in, rasterize that rectangle. With the pen tool, just follow the log. I'm gonna do this real quick. So say it's like that, cut out this part, and then right click, fill path, or no, just go up here, selection, and then feather radius 0, okay. And then down here you want to do the layer mask, and then you should just be able to hit Command I, inverse it. And now this black box is only on the right side of this log, so it's like it wraps around. You can see my pen tooling wasn't too good, so it doesn't line up perfectly, but it still looks pretty good. And then this is where you'd add your social media. So get the text, white, click, type in your link, so youtube.com/that's Qehzy. Bring down the size. It might be a little too small. Just Command T to change it to something else. There we go. And then we can add the logo for whatever here. So let me bring up flat icon real fast. And I'll just drag in a logo. Boom. Decrease the size. Add it over. And you can tell I'm going pretty quick on this because this is a fairly simple concept. But you line it up next to the link, double click, go to color overlay, and you want to do, let's do color, and let's do a red. Or actually let's do like an orange-ish, like that. And what I did was each social media, I made a different fall color, so I had red, orange, yellow, and you can do like orangish yellow, etc. and kind of do that throughout, duplicate them, and put them in different spots like that. Boom, like that's real rough obviously, but you get the gist. And that's where you can kind of put social media or whatever other little messages you'd want. That's kind of a good way to do it. And then select all that, group it, call that social media. Now we're basically done, but we want to add the final touches to make it look good. So what we're going to do is go to the very top, and the first thing we want to do is bring out the colors again. Again, like I said, if you're going for a more spooky look and you don't want all the saturation and colors, you don't have to do this, but we want to go down, get a hue and saturation, and bump up the saturation to about, what, 13 I think I had originally. And you can see the colors pop even more. Now, if we have some leaves that are still pretty dark, we can create a new layer, get white, brush tool, and again, you can kind of click in these dark spaces and brighten up some of these leaves. Set it to overlay. Boom, there we go. Maybe slightly decrease it, but now you can see a little more detail, which is always nice. And if there's spots on the text again that you want to darken or lighten, you can go ahead and do that. I showed you that earlier. And but finally, we want to darken the sides of this. So we're gonna new layer, get black, soft brush, and just go down either side like that. Slightly decrease the opacity, and boom, there is basically our header. I think it's pretty similar to the one I created originally, slightly different. I guess I changed the angle on the original one, and the screen colors here might be a little lower opacity. Bump that up, maybe that's more similar. You could also select everything, then Command J to duplicate, and then Command E to merge. So we have one big layer here, and go to like filter, camera raw filter, And if you're unfamiliar with this, you can just add some effects. So say I want to bump the saturation, maybe I go to this target saturation and go on the reds, maybe increase them a little more. They're pretty far up, but decrease that, maybe do the blues. That could be kind of interesting, like that. Click OK, and you can do a bunch in that program as well. And that actually looks not too bad. Maybe if I decrease the opacity, boom, pretty interesting. But yeah guys, that is the tutorial. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe for more tutorials. Again, if you want these files, they're available on my Patreon page. Everything that I showed you will be available in the description below. Everything that I said would be available for download. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Qehzy. Subscribe for more tutorials. Check out my Instagram, which is that's Qehzy. And I will see you guys next time. Peace.